They called him the Ghost of the Black Hills, a Lakota warrior who had turned his back on war, yet refused every woman who tried to warm his bed. He was unbreakable, until a desperate widow with nothing left to lose looked him in the eye and asked the one question that changed history. You want a wife? Or do you just want shelter? This is the untold story of Chayton and Amelia Clare. Wyoming Territory, late November 1876. The wind in Bitter Creek didn't just blow, it bit through the skin, seeking the bone. But Chayton didn't seem to feel it. He stood on the porch of Halloway's General Store, a towering figure wrapped in a buffalo coat that had seen better years. His hair, dark as a raven's wing and streaked with the premature grey of a man who had seen too much death, was pulled back severely. He was a curiosity to the townsfolk, a Lakota scout who had served under General Crook but left the army after the betrayal at the Rosebud. Now he was a drifter, a man between worlds, tolerated for his skills with a Winchester, but feared for the silence he carried like a weapon. Inside the store, the gossip was as thick as the wood smoke. "Did you see him?" whispered Sarah Miller, the mayor's daughter, adjusting her bonnet to show a scandalous amount of neck. "Father says he's looking for a place to winter. Says he's got gold hidden in those saddlebags." "He's a savage, Sarah," her mother hissed, though her eyes lingered on the warrior through the frosted glass. "Don't you go casting glances at the likes of him." It was the same everywhere Chayton went. Women were drawn to the danger of him, the stoic mystery. They dropped handkerchiefs he didn't pick up. They baked pies he didn't eat. He had turned down the Ad Clares of the saloon girls, the veiled suggestions of lonely settler wives, and even the bold proposition of the wealthy cattle baron's daughter, Abigail Thorne. Chayton had no use for them. To him, their affection was a trap, a cage gilded with soft words. He wanted solitude. He wanted to wait out the winter and move north when the thaw came. He was just tightening the cinch on his paint horse when the doors of the saloon swung open and a hush fell over the street. Amelia Clare stepped out. She wasn't like the other women. There was no silk on her back, only a faded calico dress covered by a man's heavy duster, patched at the elbows. She was thin, her face gaunt, her hands red and chapped from work that was too hard for one person. She was the widow of Thomas Clare, a man found dead in a dry creek bed 3 months prior, officially an accident, though the bullet hole in his back argued otherwise. The town treated Amelia like a ghost. They knew Samuel Thorne, the cattle baron, was squeezing her, cutting her fences, and poisoning her water to force her off her prime grazing land. No one dared help her. Helping Amelia Clare was a good way to end up like her husband. Chayton watched her. He didn't pity her. He respected the way she walked. Head up, eyes forward. Despite the mud on her boots, she moved with the dignity of a queen in exile. She walked straight up to him. The town held its breath. Sarah Miller watched from the window, mouth agape. Amelia didn't flutter her lashes. She didn't smile. She looked at the scar running down Chayton's jaw and didn't flinch. "They say you're the best tracker in the territory," she said. Her voice was raspy, tired, but steady. Chayton looked down at her, his face impassive. "I'm not for hire." "I don't have money to hire you," she replied bluntly. She glanced around the street, seeing the prying eyes. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "The bank is taking the ranch in spring if I don't get the herd to market. Thorne's men are camped on my southern ridge. I can't sleep. I can't watch the herd and the house at the same time." Chayton turned back to his horse. "Not my fight, Mrs. Clare." "I have a warm barn," she said to his back, "a root cellar full of potatoes, and a roof that doesn't leak." He paused. The winter was going to be brutal. The almanac predicted record snows. Sleeping on the trail would be a death sentence this year. "I work alone," he grunted. "I don't need a worker," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried the weight of a hammer. "Thorn won't attack a woman with a husband. He's too concerned with his reputation in Cheyenne." Chayton turned slowly. He looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the desperation she was trying to hide, the terror behind her green eyes, but mostly he saw a fire. "You asking for charity?" he asked cruelly, testing her. Amelia stiffened. She looked at the shivering women in the store window, then back at the scarred warrior. "I'm offering a trade," she said, loud enough for the eavesdroppers to hear. "I hear you need a place to lay your head, and I need a gun that doesn't miss. You want a wife? Or just shelter?" The silence on the street was deafening. It was a proposal of marriage, stripped of all romance, reduced to cold, hard survival. A business transaction. Chayton studied her. He knew Samuel Thorn. During the war, Thorn had been a supply officer who sold rotten beef to the army and blankets infested with smallpox to the tribes. Thorn was a man without honor. If this woman was standing against Thorn, she was walking into a slaughter. For the first time in years, a spark of something like purpose ignited in Chayton's chest. He swung himself up into the saddle, looking down at her. The town waited for him to ride away, to leave the crazy widow in the mud. Instead, he extended a leather-gloved hand. "Pack your wagon, Mrs. Clare," Chayton said, his voice deep and resonating through the cold air. "If we're to be wed, we best do it before the snow falls." The ride to the Clare ranch was silent. The justice of the peace had performed the ceremony with trembling hands, terrified of the glare Chayton leveled at him. It was done in 5 minutes. No rings, just a signature on a ledger. Chayton next to Amelia Clare. The ranch lay 10 miles west, nestled in a valley that should have been beautiful. But as they approached, Chayton saw the signs of siege. The fences were cut. A blackened circle in the pasture showed where a haystack had been torched. The house itself was a sturdy log cabin, but the windows were boarded up, turning it into a fortress. "It's not much," Amelia said, pulling the wagon to a halt. She refused to look at him, shame coloring her cheeks now that the adrenaline of the town had faded. "But it's mine. Thomas and I built it." Chayton dismounted, his eyes scanning the ridgeline. "It's defensible," he noted professionally, "but you're exposed from the north." "Thorn's men come from the south," she said, climbing down. She stumbled slightly, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Chayton caught her arm, his grip firm but surprisingly gentle, to steady her. She flinched, pulling away quickly. I'll show you the barn," she stammered. "The house," Chayton corrected her. Amelia froze. "The deal was shelter. The barn is warm. I fixed the loft." Chayton walked toward the house, carrying his saddlebags. If Thorn is watching, and he is, he needs to see a husband. Husbands don't sleep in the barn on their wedding night. Amelia's face went pale. She followed him into the house, her hand instinctively going to the small derringer she kept in her apron pocket. The interior was sparse. A hearth, a table with 2 chairs, and a single bed in the corner covered in a quilt. Chayton walked in, filling the small space. He placed his rifle by the door and dropped his bags. He turned to see Amelia standing by the door, her hand on her pocket. "Lock the door," he said calmly. She didn't move. I think, Chayton interrupted, taking a blanket from his roll, "that you are exhausted and terrified. I think you haven't slept in a week." He threw his blanket on the floor in front of the hearth, putting the length of the room between him and the bed. I take the floor. You take the bed. We keep the lamp on low so they see the light." Amelia stared at him, her hand slowly leaving her pocket. The relief that washed over her face was so profound it was painful to watch. She let out a breath she seemed to have been holding since the morning. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me," Chayton grunted, checking the load in his Colt. "Check the windows." That night, the wind howled like a banshee. Chayton lay awake, staring at the embers. He wasn't asleep. He was listening. He heard Amelia tossing and turning, muttering in her sleep. She was dreaming of Thomas. "Don't go, Tom. The map. Don't take the map." Chayton's eyes narrowed in the dark. Map? The next morning broke cold and grey. The tension in the cabin was palpable. They moved around each other like strangers sharing a life raft. Amelia made coffee. Chayton sharpened his knife. "I need to check the herd," Amelia said, grabbing her coat. "We check the herd," Chayton corrected. They rode out together. The cattle were thin, huddled in a box canyon. As they crested the ridge, Chayton spotted it immediately. Dust rising in the distance. 3 riders. "Thorne's men," Amelia said, her voice tightening. "That's McCabe in the front. He's the one who found Thomas." Chayton signaled her to stay back and rode forward to meet them. McCabe was a big man with a red beard and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He pulled up his horse 10 yards from Chayton, chewing on a toothpick. "Well now," McCabe sneered. "Heard the widow got herself a pet. Didn't believe it till I saw it." Chayton sat motionless on his horse. "Turn around." McCabe laughed. "This is open range, Chief. We're just checking for strays. Mr. Thorne is worried Mrs. Clare might be struggling. He sent us with a renewed offer for the land, 10 cents on the acre." "The land isn't for sale," Chayton said, "and the lady is Mrs. Clare no longer." McCabe's eyes narrowed. "Is that so? You think a piece of paper makes you the man of the house? You're just a placeholder, savage. When the snow melts, you'll be gone, and we'll still be here." McCabe's hand drifted toward his holster. It was a test. In a blur of motion, Chayton didn't draw his gun. Instead, he whipped his Winchester from its scabbard, levered around, and fired. Bang! The shot didn't hit McCabe. It hit the toothpick in his mouth, shattering it into splinters. McCabe's horse reared, throwing the man into the dirt. The other 2 riders scrambled to control their mounts, hands freezing over their guns, terrified by the impossible shot. Chayton levered another round, aiming directly at McCabe's chest as the man scrambled in the mud. "Tell Thorne," Chayton said, his voice like grinding stones, "that the price has gone up, and if I see you on this ridge again, I won't aim for the toothpick." McCabe scrambled onto his horse, his face purple with rage and fear. They turned and galloped away, dust kicking up behind them. Amelia rode up beside Chayton. She was staring at him, wide-eyed. She had never seen violence controlled so perfectly. She looked at the shattered toothpick on the ground, then up at his impassive face. "They'll be back," she said, her voice trembling. "And they'll bring more men." "Let them come," Chayton said. But as they rode back to the ranch, Chayton's mind wasn't on the gunmen. It was on what Amelia had said in her sleep. The map. Back at the barn, while Amelia went to the house to start the fire, Chayton pretended to check the horses. He moved to the back of the stall where Thomas Clare's old saddle sat gathering dust. He ran his hands over the leather, feeling for bumps, for hidden seams. Nothing. He checked the floorboards. Nothing. Then he saw it. High up on the main support beam of the barn, a small notch carved into the wood. It looked fresh. Chayton climbed the ladder. Jammed deep into a knot in the wood was a small brass casing, a spent cartridge. But it wasn't just a shell. He pulled it out with his knife. Inside the hollow casing was a tightly rolled piece of onion skin paper. He unfurled it. It was a map of the Clare Ranch, drawn in ink. But there were markings on the northern creek bed, markings that didn't denote water or grazing land. They denoted geological survey lines, and right in the center, written in Thomas Clare's hand, was a single word that explained why a man had been murdered and why a widow was being tormented. Gold. Thorne didn't want the cows. He wanted the motherlode sitting right under Amelia's house. Chayton looked toward the house, where Amelia was silhouetted in the window. She didn't know. She was sitting on a fortune, starving to death while trying to protect it. But Chayton knew something else, something that made his blood run cold. He recognized the specific markings on the map. They were Army surveyor symbols. The only way Thomas Clare could have gotten this data was from inside the military, from the very unit Chayton had scouted for. This wasn't just a land grab. This was a conspiracy that went all the way back to the betrayal that had ruined Chayton's life. He pocketed the map and walked toward the house. The shelter was gone. The war had just begun. Chayton slammed the heavy wooden door, shutting out the wind. He placed the brass casing and the crumpled map onto the rough-hewn table. "Thomas didn't die for grazing land," Chayton stated, his voice grim. "He died for this." Amelia wiped flour from her hands, tracing the ink lines. "These look like survey lines for the creek." "Look closer. These are geological markers for gold," Chayton corrected. He pointed to the handwriting in the margins. "I know this hand. Captain Marcus Reed, a disgraced officer I once scouted for. Reed provides the military intelligence. Thorne provides the muscle to clear the land. Your husband was sitting on a motherlode that runs straight through your northern ridge." Amelia sank into a chair, devastation washing over her face. "He starved. He died. For a rock." "He died protecting his home," Chayton said. He didn't offer pity, but he placed a heavy, grounding hand on her shoulder. "And we are going to finish it." That night, a blizzard buried the valley in white. The temperature plummeted, freezing the water inside the bucket. Chayton unrolled his blankets on the floor near the hearth, but the draft was deadly. "You'll freeze down there," Amelia spoke up from the bed, her teeth chattering. "I've slept in snowbanks," he grunted. "Chayton," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "this is a marriage of survival." "Survive?" He hesitated, then blew out the lamp. He climbed into the narrow bed beside her. They lay stiffly, fully clothed under the quilts, separated by inches of darkness. But the cold was a relentless enemy. Slowly, instinctively, they gravitated toward the center. When Amelia finally drifted to sleep, her head found its way to Chayton's chest. He lay awake, listening to the wind and the steady rhythm of her breathing. For the first time since the war, the ghosts in his head were silent. He realized then that he wasn't just guarding a house anymore. He was guarding her. The storm broke on the fourth morning. The world was blindingly bright and silent. "They'll come today," Chayton warned, loading his Winchester. "Snow muffles the hooves." At high noon, the horizon darkened with 20 riders. Samuel Thorne rode in front, wrapped in furs, and beside him sat a man in a tattered army coat. Captain Reed. They stopped 50 yards out. "Chayton," Reed hollered, his voice carrying over the snow. "I know you're in there. Give us the map and you can ride north. You have my word." Chayton cracked the window an inch, his eyes cold. "Your word is worth nothing, Reed." Thorne, impatient and greedy, didn't wait for negotiations. He screamed the command that shattered the silence. "Burn it down!" The first flaming arrow thudded into the roof shingles. Thick smoke instantly began to curl downward. "Into the root cellar!" Chayton barked, grabbing Amelia by the arm. "I'm not leaving you!" she cried. "Go! There's a vent that leads to the barn. Wait for my signal. If I don't signal, run!" He shoved her toward the trap door and slammed it shut. As the cabin filled with choking smoke, Chayton didn't return fire from the windows. Instead, he slipped out the back, wrapping himself in a white bedsheet he had stripped from the mattress. He dropped into the deep snowdrift on the blind side of the house. In the blinding glare of the winter sun, he vanished. He was no longer a scout. He was the ghost of the Black Hills. Outside, Thorne's men laughed, firing blindly at the burning house. "Come out, rats!" McCabe yelled. Suddenly, a rider on the flank slumped forward, a single arrow through his neck. The laughter died. Before they could turn, another man was yanked backward off his saddle by an unseen hand in the drift. "He's outside!" Reed screamed, spinning his horse frantically. "He's in the snow!" But they couldn't see him. Chayton moved like smoke, striking and vanishing. The psychological terror broke them. Thorne, terrified by the silent slaughter, spotted movement near the barn vent. It was Amelia, coughing as she emerged into the cold air. "There she is!" Thorne yelled. Seeing an easy target, he spurred his horse, charging her with his rifle raised like a club. Amelia didn't run. She stood her ground in the knee-deep snow, her hand diving into her apron pocket. Just as Thorne bore down on her, a sharp crack echoed through the valley. Thorne jerked back, a red blossom spreading across his expensive fur coat. He swayed and toppled from the saddle, dead before he hit the ground. Amelia stood over him, the smoking derringer in her trembling hand. Seeing their paymaster dead and their comrades hunted by an invisible enemy, the remaining hired guns threw down their weapons and fled. Only Captain Reed remained, freezing as he felt the cold steel of a Winchester barrel press against the back of his head. "It's over, Reed," Chayton said, the white sheet slipping from his shoulders. Reed raised his hands slowly. "The map, Chayton. Give it to me and I leave." "I burned it," Chayton lied smoothly. "Inside the house." Reed's face twisted in agony. The fortune was gone. Just then, Amelia marched up. She had grabbed Thomas's shotgun from the barn and leveled it at Reed's chest. "Get off my land," she commanded, pulling back the hammer. Reed didn't argue. He spurred his horse and galloped away, defeated and heading into a winter that would likely kill him. Silence returned to the valley. The fire on the roof had sputtered out, choked by the wet, heavy snow. Chayton gently took the shotgun from Amelia's shaking hands and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his coat, sobbing as the adrenaline crashed. "It is finished," he murmured into her hair. "And the gold?" she asked, pulling back to look at him. "You said it burned." Chayton reached into his pocket and produced the rolled onion skin map. "I lied." Amelia stared at the paper, the cause of all their suffering. She took it from him. Without a word, she walked to the smouldering remains of the haystack and tossed the map onto the embers. They watched as the location of the motherlode cooled, blackened, and turned to ash. "Why?" Chayton asked quietly. Amelia looked at him, her green eyes clear and bright. She reached up, touching the scar on his jaw. "Because I asked for shelter. You gave me a home. I won't let gold poison it." Chayton smiled, a rare, genuine expression that transformed his face. He took her hand in his. "The roof needs fixing," he said. "Then you best get a hammer, husband," she replied. They walked back toward the smoking cabin, hand in hand. They had a long winter ahead, but for the first time in both their lives, they weren't afraid of the cold. Chayton and Amelia Clare never mined an ounce of gold. Instead, they built the most prosperous cattle ranch in Wyoming, not on greed, but on the unbreakable bond forged in that winter storm. They raised 3 children and grew old on that porch. Years later, When asked why she burned a fortune, Amelia would simply squeeze Chaitan's hand and say, "Gold is cold. But love? Love is the only shelter that truly holds against the wind." Wow, what a journey. Now I have a question for you. If you were Amelia, would you have burned that map, or would you have kept the millions? Let me know your honest answer in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next story from the Wild West. Thanks for watching, and see you on the trail.